Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by my co-host, Katie Harris.
Hey, Hayden. How you doing?
Good to see you, Katie. I am doing great. Katie has joined me for a lot of podcast episodes this year, and we thought it would be super, super fun to do a 2024 Wrapped.
I like it.
Which is a lot like what Spotify does and what a lot of these like podcast and music places do, and
highlight our years. We wrap it up.
Yeah, both podcasting and I think just talking about like spot on solutions and all of the fun stuff we've done this year.
I think this is my first time in our new digs up here.
This is
in this
sweet.
Spot with you.
We have an awesome videographer that anytime we get him to film our podcast instead of doing it over Zoom,
so much better.
Is so much better. As much as Zoom's great and it connects us with all of our clients all over the country. Man, it's nice when we get to do it in person.
You know, that's actually one of my highlights from the year is we have an in-house videography team that has been on the road with us, went to some shows with us, hit some clients, like super cool addition to our services in 2024.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Well, let's start, Katie. I don't know if you have like a particular podcast you wanted to start mentioning with, or maybe let's do this first. We're going to do, this gets people a peek behind the curtain, but let's talk a little bit about Spot On Solutions this year. Like, what's been the biggest change for you in 2024 versus the last 12 plus years working in this industry?
Geez, why don't you start with a easy question?
Or start with a real easy one, yeah.
Man, I thought we were going to talk podcasts. I didn't know you were going to
We'll
get
there.
that.
We'll get there.
You know what? 2024 has been a year. It's interesting to me because now this is my 13th year as a business owner. Get Found First and Spot On Solutions both. And all along the way, you hit like plateaus.
Yeah.
Chuck Phelan calls them the entrepreneurial stall, right?
Yeah.
Where you just like, you hit it. And I always know we're coming right up on one for two reasons. Number one, some of them are predictable. Like you'll talk professionals, experts out there, and they'll tell you when you can predict you're going to hit them and why.
Yeah.
But also it's really interesting to me because like something gets so painful that you're like, oh crap, we got to figure this out.
Yeah.
And this year we've had some big things to figure out as our team has grown and clients have grown. It's like, okay, you got to figure stuff out. And I am a big believer that like what got you here won't get you there.
Yep.
And so I think our team has been really good this year at just shaking things up and having a whole new mindset to how we go at things.
Something as simple as like having enough space in our office for everybody, right?
We ran out of desks.
Like something as simple as that is like, I mean, people talk about growing their businesses and there's so many other challenges and yeah, you're dealing with more clients now and more employees, but like the basic of like, do we have enough desks for everybody? Do we have enough computers for everybody? Something as simple as that is like a challenge.
Yeah. It's good stuff, though. Nothing I'd complain about. But it's interesting because it doesn't matter how many business owners I talk to. It doesn't matter where you're at in your business. Like, you'll hit things like this where you're like, oh, I got to figure that out. That's new. I've never done that before. So we got to do that with a few different things this year. Some of them we weren't expecting, like running out of seats.
Like running out of seats. I think it helps us. Well, at least it helps me. I don't know if you feel this way, but it helps me. It gives me a greater appreciation for what our clients are going through. We're not in the home service industry. We've worked in the industry for the last 12 years, but we don't own a restoration company or anything. So we don't necessarily deal with the daily grind of having to go clean up a house or deal with that. But I think we do experience in some small way, like just the struggles that our clients are also facing. And it helps me as somebody that has to talk to a lot of clients every day, like, I kind of get some of your pain points and I get how you're feeling at times and I get the frustration of maybe not growing how you want or trying to hire good team members. Like I get that a little bit. And so
it's funny because you say we're not home service. I jumped into the home service industry as an owner this year.
Yeah, that's true.
And partnered up with some really great people in a custom cabinetry business.
Yeah, very true.
And so I do have some new insight and appreciation to what all that looks like. So interesting.
Cool. It's very cool. Well,
what stands out to you from 2024?
Oh man, I mean, all the things you mentioned. I think the biggest thing, and we say that phrase so much to the point that it's probably annoying for some people, but Like what got us here is not going to get us to where we want to go. And specifically with 2025, and we talked a little bit about this in one of our team meetings this last week. We did our quarterly planning, which is also, because it's the end of the year, was our annual planning. And I came out of that feeling like if we want to hit our goals for 2025, we have to be different. And not only like, will we grow and hire more employees? Like, of course. But
we'll work with new great clients.
We'll work with new great clients. Our clients' businesses will grow. All of that's awesome. But like the people that are here in this building have to change. Like we have to be different.
Yeah. You have to do more and learn more than you've done before. And I don't know. On one hand, I think that's terrifying a lot of times, but it's also like totally exhilarating and exciting to just know that there's so much potential, so much opportunity, and it's just right there.
And it's freeing a little bit when you just kind of accept that. When you're just like, at the end of 2025, I have to look back and be like, wow, I am a different person. Yeah. And knowing that that's got to happen, I think helps me like recognize like, let's just go do it. Like, let's not waste time.
That's why I love a new year. That's why I seriously, actually, that's why I love quarterly plannings, because it's like, oh, new stuff coming. That's why I really, really love a new year and being able to look on it, reflect, which I really think everybody should do. I think you should take some time and slow down. We talked about this in our quarterly planning, but so we get so busy trying to be better and problem solve and do all those things that sometimes we forget to just stop and celebrate the wins. And for the last few years, I've done something that I really like, and I'll just take a few minutes and you know, in my journal, in a notebook, I will write like 2024, and I'll just write all the things I can think about around it. Like, what were the wins? What did the wins look like? We sometimes just forget to stop long enough to be like, dang, that all happened this year. And so I hope, you know, people listening, just take a few minutes and go back over everything, and you'll realize I'm different than I was a year ago.
So cool. I think a big part of that, I think a lot of our growth has impacted the podcast. And I think in a lot of ways, the podcast has impacted us. I know it's helped me grow and be a better person.
We talk to the coolest people on this podcast.
We really do. We really,
like,
really do.
Cool, smart people that like just, I mean, take time out of their life to come on here and share stuff. So
100%. So as part of the Wrapped, I thought it would be good to maybe just kind of mention some of our favorite podcasts. Yeah. So I'll let you kick it off. What was some of your favorites from this year?
Oh, I'm going to totally cheat right now. Okay. So sorry.
That's okay.
But I'm cheating. We got a podcast from the Core Collective this year.
Super cool.
And it was really cool we took several members from our team. We presented at the Core Collective. We set the podcast booth up, and man, you just like lived in that thing and podcasted the whole time. And I thought all the people coming out of the Core podcast segment, I mean, I think you had Jeff Jones, did you have Michelle Blevins on that
Blevins,
one?
Alex Duda.
Yep. I mean, every time I turned around, you had somebody else awesome in your podcast booth with you. Some
people that are now like our clients, which is really cool. Like it was cool to like meet and network with some really, really awesome people. We love the people at Core. They treated us super, super well this year. We're excited to go back again in 2025. I mean, in the space of 48 hours, we recorded 10 podcasts. Like it was so cool.
Fun because I remember I was doing a training. I was doing a breakout at Core, and I was talking to him about podcasting. And I was like, just get familiar with it. Give it a try. See what it could do. And I invited him. I'm like, if you want to try it, you can walk out in our podcast booth and jump in there with Hayden. And people did it. It was super cool.
People did. Yeah, it was awesome. Core, I think, opened up my eyes to like power of and we've done this long enough. We've been doing the podcast for over 2 years, so we know that like the podcast has been cool and it's impacted people, and we've got to meet some cool people through it. But Core, I think, was the first time that I really recognized like, oh my gosh, like people like really connect with this and think it's cool, and it's helped us like I think really kind of grow this year, which has been awesome.
Podcasting is interesting because I'm seeing it more and more now across home service industry.
More people are doing them.
Where more people are picking up a podcast. And I think that is because, number one, we all spend so much time listening to podcasts now that it's just a good place to consume your content. And number two, Google's algorithm update with the helpful content update, you can get a lot of content coming out of a
really
podcast.
Cool stuff.
So it's fun. We've talked to a lot of people who are setting up podcasts. That was cool.
Yeah, super cool. I think another one of my favorites from this year was a repeat of something we did last year, which was the mental health awareness series.
Yeah.
Really, really love that. We got to have like kind of our in-house counselor or our in-house therapist, for lack of a better term. Ashton Holbrook got to come back on the podcast this year, and he's awesome. He's here local. Yeah. He now has gone out and owns his own practice now and works just down the road from us. Like literally I could throw a rock and hit his office, which is so cool to see like how his life has changed over the last year and a half.
And that catapulted from coming on our podcast
the first
super
time
cool. A couple years ago.
Super cool. So that was one of my favorite series.
Also coming out of that podcast, here's what I love about the podcast. I really love when something actionable comes out of it. When somebody calls us up and says, I heard this and I'm doing this, or I learned this, and like that is awesome. And this year, one cool thing was, I think we were some of the first ones to start talking about mental health awareness in the industry. And that question landed on the State of the Industry survey for the restoration industry this year. And I got to help write a little bit of an article as a follow-up to that in CNR magazine. But that to me is super rewarding when you can do things and start conversations that then impact businesses, impact industries. That is maybe the most rewarding part of the year.
Yeah, so cool. I think another thing that I really loved from this year, talking about like impact to the industry, and it really sucks because we've had other members of the Violan team come on the podcast. But being able to do a podcast with Jeff Jones was awesome. Dude. He's the man, and we got to do a couple with him this year.
Oh, my gosh. He's going to hear you say he's the man. It's going to go like on repeat. He's the man. He's the man.
We'll cut that part out. No.
It was a great podcast.
Jeff teased us. He's like, you've had everybody else at my company except for me.
And I don't know why. Because when I came into this industry, Jeff Jones is one of the first people I met. And Violan Management was one of our very first clients and still is today. And so... Man, shout out to Jeff Jones for coming on our podcast. That was we could have talked to him all day long.
Yeah, and what Violan does in the industry is so cool, and the amount of businesses they get to help. And so, Jeff's was great. I think another that really stood out to me, and we both talked about him before the podcast, was Brad Camphouse.
Oh, yeah,
Brad's super cool, and I know you're getting to work with him on a lot of different aspects and pieces, different businesses and opportunities there. But getting to talk just about like his story was incredible. And again, the fact that he's local and we got to record that here locally with him was so cool.
I also really loved that was Brad's first podcast he'd ever come on.
Yeah.
And I would have never guessed that about him. But since then, man, he's recording stuff and he just jumped all in. And but it was cool when Brad came on. I don't know if you remember, but we weren't in this cool setup. We were downstairs and we were recording, and all of a sudden people like started coming around the corner and listening.
Like listening and
it caught their attention what he was saying, and that's Brad.
You know it's good when our videographer, Tanner, who films our podcast when we're doing them in office.
He's our number one fan.
Is writing down notes as Brad is talking. Yes! You know that's a good podcast when our videographer is like, let me turn away from my camera to write something down. Like, it was super impactful. The idea and the concept of like mindset and visualization. I know that's like, those are kind of buzzwords that a lot of people in business just use and throw out and don't really mean.
Well, and sometimes you think they're a little fluffy.
Yes.
Like a little frou-frou, I don't know, vision board, whatever. Dude, Brad makes that crap cool.
And I know this about you. You are all bought in enough that you put the visualization thing that he talks about in your calendar. I see that in your calendar. I go to like look for what, me and Katie need to meet today. Let me see if I can schedule some meeting with her. And there at the top, the first thing on her calendar every day is that visualization thing that Brad talked about. Yeah. And so people need to go listen to that episode. If you've got big dreams or big goals or want to be that kind of person, Brad's your guy.
He's your guy. That was a good
And the fact that he's this big, giant,
teddy bear.
Teddy bear is like the coolest thing too. Yeah. So
he's a good guy.
What else? Any other podcasts that really stand out? We could talk about every single one.
You know what? He's been a regular since day one, but I always love having Kenyon Martin. He's a hometown restoration owner, and he had big things happening this year, and he merged his company with another company.
Yeah.
And man, I love listening to Kenyon talk. He is like a down to earth, real guy that I would say is living in the trenches every day of what it's like to go be just a really caring, generous employer, right? Like he cares about his people. He cares about his customers, cares about his family. And to watch that process this year and talk to him about merging with another company was really interesting to me.
Yeah, we hear a lot. I mean, we've had clients of ours that have been, and he wasn't like acquired and it wasn't private equity by any means, but like we have clients that get acquired or their business gets bought, and we see kind of the stresses and the challenges of that. It was really cool to be like here really close with someone that's been a close client of ours for a long time, that's a friend of ours, also kind of go through this process.
It's a hard, emotional road.
Yeah.
And it was a good, it's good.
And he navigated it really well. His team navigated it really well. And I mean, as smoothly as a transition like that can go, they did it. And like they had a couple giant jobs come in the middle of that transition.
Of course, because that's just how it goes.
And they navigated all incredibly. And it was super cool to be a fly on the wall for that.
To me, you go back and you look at our YouTube channel, or you go to Apple Podcasts, or wherever you want to get your podcast, but you can just, it is like a master class in success. Yeah. And it's not sugar-coated, and it's not everybody just putting on their best face, right? Like it's real life stuff. And I feel like 24 was a master class in business all throughout the podcast.
Yeah. Makes me excited about what 2025 is going to be like. Like we have so many cool things coming up this year, and cool people that we want to talk to. We've changed a little bit about how we operate with the podcast. We've really focused on, we've been so consistent over the last 2 years. Now we're kind of taking that consistency and really trying to focus on the quality. It's why we have people like Tanner, our videographer, helping us do this. Like we really want to like go out and talk to and interact with some really, really cool people. And I think take our podcast even that much further this year. At least that's kind of how I see 2025 happening. So
I better say one more podcast.
Go for
here,
it.
or else I'm going to get in trouble. But Eric Sprague.
Oh, yeah.
Well, his episode, when he talked about the first chapter of his book, I thought, I've said it over and over again, I was super blessed to be able to co-author a book with Eric this year.
So good.
And I've said time and time again, if all you do is read the first section of that book where Eric talks about having a heart attack at 49 and what that led him to, honestly, that's my favorite moment. That's my favorite moment of the podcast all year, is him just letting down his guard and talking about that.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that you guys got to do it together at a Violan planning retreat.
That's right. We were actually at
you were in Florida.
Violan Business Planning in Florida recording that podcast. You were the one on Zoom. Yeah. And we were sitting there together.
And I hadn't, I mean, I had read his chapter in the book, but to hear him talk about it again, it's just so cool. And the book you guys wrote, again, I mean, we had a podcast about that. I know you guys are doing your quarterly trainings where you get to interact and talk to people about it.
What's so interesting is when people hear him tell that story, it hits home with owners, managers, right? They're just like, that's me. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, maybe they haven't had the heart attack or the real serious health problems, but they've all been like, oh my gosh, I have worked myself to death, and
there's a path, there's a map for it. And so Road to Seven Figures, that honestly is a roadmap to success. And anytime I get a, share a room or a podcast with Eric is really an honor. And we have people flocking to Ogden, Utah, to come in and sit in a room and work on some of that. And so that was a true highlight of 24.
I love it. Any, what are you hoping we can do with the podcast in 2025, Katie? I'm going to put you on the spot again. I started with a tough question. I'm going to finish with a tough one.
I know. You usually send me questions in advance, man. So I'm kind of prepared for it. Probably what I've always hoped to do, which is just make business a little bit easier for people. Yeah. I love that, we get to be in it every single day. Yeah. But we're all kind of fighting the same thing, right? We're all trying to be successful. We're all trying to figure out the same problems. How do I hire? How do I fire? How do I set up systems? How do I get cash flow? Like, every single entrepreneur is trying to solve all those same things. And for me, hearing other people's stories, whether they're the hard stories or the success stories, there's just lessons in them. So, I mean, that's my hope for the podcast this year. We touch as many people as we can, and we help as many businesses grow, or at least inspire you to have a great day that day.
Yeah. I love it. Amen. I agree. I think 2025, we're set up to do some really, really cool things. And I'm excited to see where the podcast goes and where Spot On Solutions and our clients, where we all get to grow and change. So,
well, I appreciate you being our host every single time for the Success Elevated podcast. I always have people tell me how much they love sitting down with you in a conversation.
Oh, it's fun.
You make it easy, and I know that's because you genuinely care about people, and you are great at getting the stories to come out. So,
well, it's easy to do when it's as fun as it is, and I seriously, it's one of my favorite things that I get to do, and yeah, I love getting to meet and talk to cool people. So, you included, Katie.
Thanks so much. Well, that's a wrap for 2024. We are done with this year.
This is going to be our last podcast for the year, and looking forward to next year. So, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Happy New Year.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.